On May 6, 2026, the world lost an absolute titan. Ted Turner passed away at 87 after a battle with Lewy body dementia. And man, he left behind a legacy that literally reshaped three entirely different global industries. We're talking about a guy who revolutionized television news, altered the landscape of professional sports, and completely redefined modern conservation and philanthropy. But to really understand the man behind the myth, you gotta look at how he saw himself. He once told an interviewer, "I'm a multifaceted person. I've got a lot of different personalities." And honestly, that perfectly sets the stage for this explainer. We're diving into the chaotic, sprawling, and just utterly fascinating legacy of a man known equally for his sharp business instincts and his wild, unfiltered, cigar-smoking bravado. To put things into perspective, at the time of his passing, his net worth was sitting right around $2.8 billion. And here's the wild part. That's actually after he gave massive amounts of it away, and after taking a massive financial hit during the AOL-Time Warner merger. Because, believe it or not, his fortune had previously peaked at around $10 billion. This was a sprawling empire built entirely on audacious, almost unbelievable risks.
So let's jump straight into Act 1, the media pioneer.
Turner took over his father's billboard business at a young age after a family tragedy. But he didn't just maintain the status quo. No way. He relentlessly built an empire. In 1970, he buys the struggling Atlanta TV station, Channel 17. By 1976, he makes the groundbreaking decision to bounce its signal off a satellite to local cable providers all over the country. Boom, the first cable superstation is born. And then, in 1980, he takes his absolute biggest gamble yet, launching the cable news network. Now, you have to think about the media landscape back then. We were all conditioned to wait for the 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. evening news from the major networks just to find out what happened that day. Turner's vision absolutely shattered that old paradigm. He imagined a world with 24/7 continuous global coverage. He turned live news into the real-time global experience that, let's be honest, we all completely take for granted today. Of course, the established TV networks, they just laughed at him. They actually mocked CNN, calling it Chicken Little News, basically saying nobody is going to want to watch the news all day long. Well, Turner proved them entirely wrong. He figured out how to do more with less, providing this unparalleled, on-the-ground live event coverage that the traditional networks just didn't have the capacity or the airtime to match. And from that single 24-hour news channel, it spread like wildfire. He rapidly amassed an unrivaled portfolio under the Turner Broadcasting umbrella. We're talking CNN International, TNT, the Cartoon Network, Turner Classic Movies, the whole shebang. Plus, he synergized his media reach with his sports assets, broadcasting his beloved Atlanta Braves and Hawks to a massive national audience. He was literally the undisputed king of cable, right up until that financially disastrous merger with AOL-Time Warner in the early 2000s. Which brings us to Act 2, the swashbuckling sportsman. His former wife, actress Jane Fonda, famously called him a swashbuckling pirate who always wanted to be right in the middle of the action. And he absolutely earned his nickname Captain Outrageous. I mean, he took hands-on ownership to a totally different level. Picture this, it's 1977, and his baseball team, the Atlanta Braves, is suffering through an agonizing 16-game losing streak. What does Turner do? He tells his manager to take a few days off and literally puts himself in the dugout, naming himself the manager for a game. They lost 2-1 to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and Major League Baseball immediately stepped in to shut his managerial career down. But the legend of Captain Outrageous? Yeah, that was cemented forever. But that unyielding competitive fire wasn't just for the baseball diamond. He also took it to the high seas. See, he was a world-class sailor. In 1977, the exact same year he managed the Braves, he famously skippered the Courageous Crew to win the America's Cup, the absolute premier yachting competition in the world. Reflecting on that monumental win, he said, "There will never be a time in my life as good as this time. I can't believe all this is really happening to me." So he clearly had this incredible drive, but you really have to ask yourself, Could simply owning championship-winning sports franchises actually satisfy his grand ambitions? I mean, he owned the Braves when they won the '95 World Series. But for a visionary like Turner, traditional sports eventually just felt like too small a stage for his massive global perspective. Getting frustrated by the political maneuverings of the Cold War, specifically the US boycotting the 1980 Moscow Olympics and the Soviets returning the favor in LA in '84, he decides to just take matters into his own hands. He audaciously founds the Goodwill Games. In 1986, he brings 3,000 athletes from 79 different countries together in Moscow, just to foster international goodwill through sport. It was this massive, disruptive initiative that ended up running 5 times in total. It really proved he wasn't afraid to just step right into global diplomacy. Let's slow down the pace a bit for Act 3, The Philanthropist and Caretaker. In his later years, he began channeling his vast resources and boundless energy into solving some of the world's absolute most pressing issues. He founded the Turner Foundation in 1990 to safeguard habitats. He even merged his media savvy with his environmentalism by co-creating the beloved '90s cartoon Captain Planet. Remember that? He did that to educate a whole new generation. Later on, alongside Senator Sam Nunn, he co-founded the Nuclear Threat Initiative to combat global weapons of mass destruction. Oh, and he also signed the Giving Pledge, committing the vast majority of his wealth to charitable causes. And we have to talk about 1997, when Turner made this unprecedented, jaw-dropping pledge of $1 billion to the United Nations. At the time, a private citizen making a philanthropic gift of that magnitude to a global governing body, that was literally unheard of. It was a historic, monumental move that proved his absolute commitment to his stated goal, leaving the world a better, safer place than he found it. You know, by the time of his passing, he was one of America's largest private landowners. He held over 2 million acres across multiple states, from Montana to New Mexico to South Dakota. But here's the kicker. He didn't buy this land to build strip malls or subdivisions. He bought it to preserve it. He heavily limited future development and parcellation just to permanently protect the biodiversity of these incredibly vast landscapes. And on those 2 million acres, his massive hands-on conservation efforts resulted in a sprawling herd of 45,000 American bison. He essentially brought the entire species back into robust commercial and ecological health. He also founded the Turner Endangered Species Fund, working super closely with biologists to protect imperiled wildlife, like the desert bighorn sheep and the Mexican wolf. So despite all the businesses he built, the properties he bought, and the networks he launched, Ted Turner actually preferred the term caretaker over owner. He often reminded people, we don't own anything, we just borrow it for a while. And honestly, that's such a profound perspective from a man who seemingly had it all. It really reminds us that his incredible 87 years were just a brief, bold rental of this world. When you look at the immense, multifaceted footprint of Ted Turner, it leaves us with one final provocative question. What kind of legacy will you leave with the time you borrow?